All right, hey everyone, let's get started and we will see if folks call in. Please mute your phone if you're just listening. It is, wow, it's July 16th, Thursday. This is week 8 out of 12. So I want to acknowledge it's been a lot of information. People have done well. And I would say lecture 7 and lecture 8 focused on light management and greenhouse and light management indoor are probably the most technical um, lectures in the whole series. So I'll just say this, I'll give you a heads up. We finish off with some really fun food production concepts, novel food production concepts, talking about quality of crops, nutrition of crops, different markets, and things like that. So we still got to get through crop nutrition and pest control, but then we do get into some more entrepreneurial concepts where you're bringing all your information and all your knowledge together and thinking of that broad system approach for CEA. So I'm just acknowledging the last two lectures have been a little more technical with some science. And again, the goal is not to retain all that information, but at least to be able to understand the critical aspects of it and have a conversation about it. And for light management, I broke it into two lectures because that's how important it is. You've got the greenhouse component that can be low tech, mid tech, and high tech greenhouse. We're thinking about light penetration. We're thinking about roofing type. We're thinking about crop targets. How much light does my crop need? It's such a key question, and so many people try and grow and then they wonder why their plants are not productive. The first thing you think about is light. What is your light level? What's your crop? What time of year are you growing? Um, and then for the indoor piece, right? What's different about indoor versus greenhouse? Big deal. In indoor, you have no natural sunlight. It's 100% fake light, supplemental lighting. So it's a whole nother area of expertise. And that was the great thing about the tour. We got to look at some very high tech Percival growth chambers, got to see some lights with a dashboard and a controller. It gets really, really sophisticated. To be honest, I don't think I could operate those Percivals right now with my current skill level. I would have to sit down with that chamber. I'd have to read and look at how it operates, test a few things, do a few test runs before I even felt confident. That's how much technology and how quickly technology is changing. So I feel if you're feeling somewhat, overwhelmed by the amount of information, that's okay. I'm just acknowledging it and saying that even I feel at times like how can I keep up, especially with indoor lighting. So yeah, I kind of wanted to just say that lecture 7 and 8 are pretty technical. Um, and then we get into some interesting topics after that. So for this discussion, let's try and do the same thing. If people have questions, you can do it verbally, you can type it in the chat. Happy to answer any question. Ideally, it has some controlled environment aspect to it, but happy to go over a range of topics. And actually, there has been there's been some nice kind of exchanges, one-on-one exchanges on Basecamp as well. So there's actually some questions there that are worth talking about and some concepts. See, all my favorite people are on the call. All right. Any thoughts? Any questions? Well, I'll break the ice. How about this? So in lecture E, we do talk about indoor light, and I introduce um, this light meter in that lecture. It's the same light meter that I had on the tour, and it's an apogee instrument quantum flux meter. And I just want to reset that this meter is an essential tool for anyone to have, whether it's again low tech, mid tech, high tech, or indoor. Really, really need to be able to know how to use this, know how to speak the language of light, which is micromoles for intensity, and it's moles of par per day for accumulated light, or what's known as daily light integral. So all of that, these kind of sensors, handheld sensors or automated sensors, are part of speaking the language of light. Still waiting for questions. If not, I'm going to bring up a question. Um,
Hey Dan, how you doing, sir? It's Josiah. I had one. I've
Josiah, how
been
you been,
abstinent
Josiah?
for good, man. Just got back. I don't think I mentioned my son was playing soccer in Spain, so it's been
Oh,
a
no
pretty
way.
cool experience. Yeah,
Oh, that's awesome. How'd you like the food there? Talk about, did you go to any markets and look at all the fresh produce?
the produce is amazing. It's 10 times better than what we got here. I love pork and beef, so they're big on everything with potatoes, pork, oxtails. So I'm really debating on leaving.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but
the salty meats, the markets, and remember, southern Spain is one of the biggest producers of CEA vegetables for all of Europe.
wow,
And,
I didn't know
and
that.
check it out. So again, and they're more in that low tech model. And I'll let you talk about your question, but I'm sorry you mentioned Spain because there's this intense rivalry between Holland and Spain. And it's
Mm,
kind of like Canada versus Mexico in terms of climate. Holland is
okay.
way north. It's cloudy, it's cold, especially in wintertime. I mean, their cool period is 5 months of the year, and Spain is south, and it's very hot and dry. And there's a huge low tech greenhouse industry in southern Spain. And then Dutch, again, because of the climate, they have to invest in more technology. So it's all glass house, more automation, all of these heating, cooling systems, et cetera, up in that high tech region. So there's kind of this battle between the hot, bright, low tech environment of southern Spain and the cool, dark climate and high tech model in Holland. And they kind of battle it out, and Spain is just doing amazing things. And obviously, their food is kind of an example of how well they're doing.
Yeah, it's A1. I mean, it's so fresh and it's amazing. Like even just like the indigestion I've been having trying to regroup from here to California. I mean, it's pure and evident.
It's
Yeah,
shocking. So, I mean, seriously, why not try and recreate some of that here?
right. That's the goal. That is the goal. So I wanted to know. I know I didn't get to do the tour, but is it being that it's kind of local here? Is there a place that we can go by and tour on our own time too?
It's a good question. So, it's the plant research greenhouse on campus, and it does take even like I don't even arrange that tour. That's arranged through certain connections and relationships. But I think we can check in with Peggy to see if a subgroup or you could just go and tour that facility. And that's where you do get to see some indoor growth chambers. You get to see, I would say it's verging on high tech for sure. And it's a research greenhouse, so it wouldn't necessarily be, I think, a commercial greenhouse for food production. It's more of a research greenhouse, but it literally has everything we've been talking about. So, man, I'm happy to reach out and see if I can kind of make that happen for a take two.
I'd love that. And then and I just wanted to make sure I'm up to date on everything for classwork, being I'm doing all my assignments and stuff, even though I didn't get to do the Zoom classes.
Yeah, it's a good note for everyone. So look, this course is self-paced. So
Okay.
and the goal we just want people to get their certificate actually and to participate, do your best on those quizzes. They're literally 10 questions. Lectures are, I think, no longer than 35 minutes. A bunch are in the 22 or 25-minute range. 10 questions, boom, boom, boom. Get your tea, get your coffee, whatever, and knock out a couple of those if you can. And happy to, just make sure people who make that effort get their get their certificate for completing the course. So it's self-paced, but again, we are in week 8. It's week 9. We have 3 more weeks after this, and then we'll probably give another week after that for people to just wrap up stuff, finish their quizzes, and be done.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Yeah. I mean, the discussion, the tour was, is I think we had about 10 people come. So we know that's during work hours. It's far. I totally understand that. To me, that was like an extracurricular thing. And it's that was not really, it's not really considered part of the course, but it was a really good opportunity. So yeah, everybody just please focus on those lectures and focus on those short quizzes. There's a bunch of people who are great contributors or maybe falling a little behind in quizzes. I understand that. So that's why I'm just saying, okay, we're in week 8. We got 3 weeks plus we'll give you another week after that. You got 4 weeks to get everything, and would love if people could yeah, get that all wrapped up. Clint's got a question about commercial greenhouse operations in SoCal. And yeah, I mean, we kind of went over that, I think, in one of the first weeks. As I've said, open field agriculture, orchards, berries, vines are kind of dominant in Southern California. There's not quite as much, but I mentioned the story of Howlings greenhouse in, I believe, Camarillo. They were one of the biggest tomato on the vine producers on the West Coast, actually. And they actually sold to Glasshouse Farms, which is a cannabis company. So Howlings exited the market. Energy prices, labor prices, regulations are definitely making it tough on Southern California. I have to say that it is. And as we mentioned, we had Revel Greens out of Tehachapi, made it 3 years, and then the investment company took ownership of the greenhouse, and I believe they're leasing it to another company. I'm not sure if they're in production yet. So it is a little bit tough to in a commercial greenhouse operation scene. I would say there's probably going to be more. I would say there's some ornamental stuff. There's definitely some nursery type stuff. I'm believing those are going to be greenhouse operations. I think there's a variety of structures, but like when you compare it to Netherlands or southern Spain, this is not going to be as comparable. But let me think about it, Clint. I may and actually think in some of the additional learning. So don't forget in base camp for each week you've got the actual lecture recording. And then in most weeks I have a document with additional learning. I forget which one, but one of those has quite a few links to Agritech Greenhouse, which builds a lot of low and mid tech in Southern California. So there's a couple examples there of nurseries or ornamentals facilities in Southern California. Um, so Alice, welcome, Alice. Alice jumped in a bit mid-course, but has had some good questions. She got a question about level two course after this one. So the truth is, this is the level two. We started off with fundamentals of controlled environment agriculture. One lecture, that's lectures 1 through 6. And then now we're into lectures 7 through 12. So 6 lectures in the fundamentals and 6 lectures in the advanced. And we just finished lecture 8 in the advanced course. So it's kind of 12 lectures, but we split it in half, 1 through 6 and 7 through 12. 7 through 12 is the advanced course. So that's where we're at, and that's why I mentioned um, 7 and 8. The 7 and 8 are pretty technical because we're talking light. And I'm telling you, I've been in this industry. I've been literally dealt with groups all over the world and the highest tech and the biggest funding and lots of money, and folks still cannot have a conversation about light. What is light? How do you use it? How much does it need? It's one of the most challenging. So that's why I spent 2 lectures on it. So yeah, that's why I say we're in the advanced part of the course. If you want more, I would say, um, speaking of more and the additional learning, in the week 8 folder, the additional learning document has, I think, 4 or 5 links there to lighting and industry articles. I would recommend going to the additional learning document and clicking on those examples. That will give you a run for your money. It has, again, industry discussion of lighting technology. It has how to calculate DLI. It has a reference to a DLI calculator, quite a bit there. So I think between the lectures and then the additional learning sections, there's a great opportunity. In terms of more, what we're really the whole course, and I think Crystal and others from the R Garden have talked about is, yeah, what is next for Riverside? How can we get more hands-on? That's definitely something that I'll bring to the Office of Technology Partnership to get more of this. I did post on Basecamp in reply to Crystal. Um, this incredible interest with fresh food production, localized food production, tasty food, the stuff that a lot of people want but don't get. And some people have never had it. They've literally never grown up tasting a good melon. Um, so that goes hand in hand with controlled environment agriculture. I really believe that. We just talked about Spain. We talked about the Netherlands. I mean, I was just in, I was in Greece. I was also in Dubai. I was, I've in almost every place I've been, you have more of this localized food production, small farms, farmers markets where you can go get tasty stuff. It's all over Asia as well. Small markets, fresh materials, different things that people want based on their cooking, their diet, their culture, all of that. I just see so much potential. I think a lot of other people do too, to be honest. But we've talked about this, Josiah and everyone else, right? What is the limiting factor? Is it really the food production system, or is it our food distribution system? Like I said, you walk into Rayleigh's or Safeway or whatever your grocery store is down in Southern California. Let's just talk about Costco. I mean, how big is their refrigerated room in Costco compared to the rest of the store? Pretty small. And you've got berries, you got leafy greens, you got a few vegetables. You now have a section for mushrooms. Um, it's actually not that big when you think about the entire store. They have very limited shelf space. And the fact is, they've carved out actually significant space just for raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, occasionally blackberries. That's something new that's just popped up, I'd say the last 5 years. So they carved out a footprint for that. And so I think part of that is how do people purchase fresh things? And one thing I linked in Basecamp this morning in response to Crystal was here at UC Davis. They actually have a really cool garden program. And I took a course there, God, a lot of years ago. I won't say how long, but when I was a student at Davis, and it was exactly, kind of what we've been talking about in terms of local food production. And a lot of it is open field food production, but they certainly have cold frames. They have a seeding nursery and all of that other CEA stuff that helps support the field. And that kind of is a vision I could see for UC Riverside, um, and maybe the R Garden, which would be a lot of the feedback we've received, which is how can I get more hands-on? How can I get more involved with food production? Doesn't have to be a high-tech glass house. It just has to be maybe a nursery where you're able to grow things you want. I'm going to bring up I'm going to bring up a cool question that I got on Basecamp. And this question's come up, but it has to do with um, okay, I'm going to hold that question because we got a question from Moises, and then we'll go back to you, Josiah. Okay. Um, hey Moses, he's checking out the DLI calculator. Quick case study: common crop leafy green sprouts showing how to imp. Okay, so wondering, run through a quick case study of a common crop leafy green sprouts, something like that, showing how to input realistic PPFD readings or light intensity readings from a meter and interpreting that information to make a decision on light management. Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, lecture 8 kind of runs through some of that, and so does lecture 7. So, but I could just summarize it right now. First thing you got to know is how much DLI is daily light integral. That's moles of par per day. That's the accumulated light the plant sees per day. And every crop has a target. Let's just think in whole numbers, okay? So lettuce needs less light than tomato. We just know that, okay? And you should know that too. Um, so let's say lettuce has a target of 20 moles of par per day, and tomato has a target of 30 moles of par per day. So you want to be at that target as much as you can. And if you're growing in Riverside, January through December, you first of all, and let's say you're growing it in a simple low-tech poly house, first thing you need to do, and we go through this, right, a little bit, is to know how much natural light you get in Riverside every month of the year outside. And there are links to that, and you can find that and you can search that. But that's kind of the first place you kind of start is what does my crop need? Let's say 20 moles for lettuce, hydroponic lettuce, or herbs to less than tomato. You need to know how much light you get outside every month of the year on average. We generally use a 30-year mean. Then you need to think how much light am I losing through my roof? Man, there's so many different kinds of roof. Just for a single sheet of polyplastic, there's clear and there's diffusion plastic. Those are very different. And not only that, I just want people to think about in terms of roofing and light transmission. Think about what would happen if you left your car outside for a year and never washed it in Riverside. You know, it would look completely dirty. And the same thing happens with greenhouses. So that's why people either wash roofs off if you don't get rain in the fall, or you change out plastic. So you need to know that light transmission number. And then you can do a rough model and calculation on how much light gets inside the greenhouse every month of the year. And then all you do once you have that number, then you basically can calculate, do I need to add supplemental light or not? And that's a big decision. Because think about it this way, right? When it's dark out, when it's the dark season and you're not getting sufficient light for your crop inside, that's the same thing for every single farmer. No one else has, magically gets more light outside. So that everyone has to deal with the season of the dark season and the seasonal effect. So the question is, do you want to make an investment in supplemental lights? You can hit your light target even in the dark months so you can deliver product to market. And so that's kind of a decision that you would have to make based on how much money you have, what the price of electricity is, how much the fixtures cost, how much the electrical work to support those fixtures cost. So that's where all of those things kind of come into play in terms of what your DLI target, what you decide your realistic DLI target is, and whether you want to use supplemental light to do it. On the other hand, we talked about the dark season there. You want to think about the bright season as well, right? Because I mean, how hot was it in Riverside today or yesterday? Probably pretty warm. Was it 100? I think it probably was at least over 100. And let's say your temperature target for lettuce is 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That means you need to cool 25 degrees versus outside. So what are you going to do there? If you know your light target, you know your light transmission, and you know how much light is outside, then you should be able to say, all right, I have a lot of excess light in July for my lettuce crop. Therefore, I'm okay applying a 50% shade cloth. That's just an example of the kind of thinking I want people to be able to do, you know, and then the question is, okay, I'm using 50% shade during the summer to protect my crop and cool my crop, maintain my light level and my temperature target. But what happens around September 21st? Well, September 21st is the equinox. That's when we have 12 hours of light, 12 hours of darkness, and then we start losing a lot of minutes of light, and then it starts getting much, much cooler, and the angle of the sun declines. So, sure, go ahead and use 50% shade June, July, August, even into mid-September, especially if you get one of those heat spells in September. Seriously, look at the weather. You know, we get these heat spells in September. In that kind of situation, if you're growing lettuce, even though the sun angle's lower and you may not be getting as much DLI, go ahead and leave that shade cloth on. And it's just a matter of knowing those kind of decisions based on temperature and light. So that's kind of one example. And then the other thing I see a lot of people do is that basically people kind of a lot of sites leave their shade on too long and they think, okay, well, it's still pretty warm out. It's October. I'm still going to leave my 50% shade cloth. That's just not really checking and understanding those light levels. So you need to really realize how important light is and how much response you'll get from your crop. For example, by pulling shade cloth in late September, you will get like a full another run on your tomatoes if you pull that shade cloth off and make sure the plants get more light going into November, December. So that's just how important it is. Um, so, yes, sir. So Aaron has a question. Stringing up cucurbits in pots on benches close to the ground, about 2 feet away from the lights. At what height would you take your light intensity measurement to make sure you have enough supplemental lighting? It's a great question. And I thought about this so much, and I bet there's many different answers, but I'm going to give you one that I've used for a long time. Um, so you have to think about crop architecture for sure, because there is kind of a starting plant architecture and then a finishing plant architecture. And indeterminate tomato, cucumbers, and melon, and anything that's trained up, obviously you're going to see a big change in elevation. I mean, sometimes it can go 6 or 8 or 10 feet tall. In the Netherlands, they run their tomatoes, they run as high as 14 feet, right? So the question is, yeah, where do you measure your light intensity to calculate your internal DLI? And you have to make some compromises here. Now, one thing I do want to reset, and I know I've mentioned this in previous lectures, is that different crops have different light requirements. We talked about those buckets, right? Lettuce needs less than tomato. Tomato needs more than strawberry. So yes, crops need have different light requirements. And within each crop, as the plant grows, it has different light requirements. A seedling will be completely happy from day 0 to 14 with 250 micromoles, or let's say 15. That same plant, let's say it's a tomato plant, will need, or will not need, but let's say can easily use 1,000 micromoles, 4 times that amount of light, let's say starting at day 60. So we talked about day 0 through 14, the plant only needs 250 micromoles. Day 14 to day 16, you want to ramp that light up from 250, maybe up to 800 or 1,000. So in my mind, it kind of depends on, how do you measure that? My thing, if you have a supplemental light canopy and that's generally fixed, yeah, they have ones that move up and down, but those are pretty problematic and expensive. So generally, if you have to install supplemental lighting, it's at a fixed location. I like to know the whole range of light down underneath that fixture, and that's why these handheld meters are so nice because it just allows you to take this sensor and move it up and down and move it left to right. Moving it left to right, you get to see the banding, right? Especially with LED fixtures. And moving it up and down, you see a lot of light intensity. So I think 2 feet to answer your question, I think 2 feet below the fixture is a pretty high number. That actually, the crop's going to be at that point for how long? It's, probably not that high. I typically would calculate for a tall crop. I would typically calculate approximately 4 feet below the light fixture is where I take my light intensity reading. And then I assume that crop is going to hit that point at a certain day. And then that's basically where I calculate my DLI. I'm sorry, it's kind of a long answer, but there's so many components of that. I like to see, when the plant is furthest from the lamp, you can have a reading. When the plant is halfway to its highest point, you can have a reading there. And you can also have a reading, um, very close to the fixture when the crop is finishing off and getting close. Lecture 8 gets into that pretty nicely. It talks about those different changes, and it's just important to be able to be familiar with your light fixture and how much light loss you're having as you go away from the fixture. Um,
Hey Dan, I have one if I can.
oh yeah, jump in.
Hey, first off, thank you too for the Premier Equipment Marketplace. I've been geeking out on that link, so thank you for that. I was kind of like, I'm doing outdoor, so I'm in this phase of like trying to figure it out. Like we get 290 sunny days in San Bernardino, so for me, it's like, when does it really make sense to go indoor? Economically, and I've been trying to get that together because we also have a lot of empty warehouse space here where we could do some control agriculture stuff, but it's just trying to get the grips around like, where does that economic meter hit me? Like, is it on the cost of saving water, versus paying for the light? Like, that's what's really confusing to me because it just seems like staying outdoors is so much cheaper. I mean, I put my plants in, I know my times, I know my water, PSIs, things like that, put my shade stuff out, but it's like, when does it really make sense to go indoor financially?
Awesome question. I want everyone to be thinking like this. When does it make sense to do it? Because just because the technology's out there doesn't mean you should invest in it. And you're right. Riverside has a great climate, really most of the year. I would say the tough times, I'd say 10 weeks in the winter and 14 weeks in the summer can get tough for some crops outside. But generally you can work around that, I think. So I mean, I personally think in Riverside, if it was me, and I would focus on that outdoor production component because of the cost, exactly like you said. I would use CEA potentially. And here's a question for you, back at you. Where do you currently get your seedlings from, your transplants?
So we're now getting them from other plant or other farmers. I'm going into heirloom as well seeds, things like that. Because I seen that big issue with the one farmer that was doing I think it was nectarines up north. Um, he was using somebody else. He was planting these nectarines, and somehow they sued him, saying that they were his seeds or somebody else's seeds were owned by it. So I've been kind of studying that. But yeah, so I've just been going to heirloom and us doing crop swaps.
Yeah, yeah. And that can maybe work for a while, but if you really want to dial in your operation, I think, and to me, when I say dial in, so I'll back up and say this. So the nursery, do people know what a nursery is? That's basically producing small plants that get transplanted into the field or into your garden, right? It's huge industry. Home Depot, hardware stores are selling all these veggies starting, let's just say April 1st, right? And it blew me, like prices have gone up a lot. A single 4-inch pot with a tomato plant is now, I mean, minimum like $5, okay, for a single
Yeah,
tomato plant. And yeah, if you're a commercial grower, you can get seedling starts for probably less than that in bulk. But I think, I don't know how big your operation is. I don't know how many, I mean, planting cycles you have and things like that. If I was going to invest in anything, I would invest in nursery space. And that would just be, like I said, for that day zero to, let's say day 0 to 21.
right.
And you wouldn't even have to go into a 4-inch. You'd go into like a jumbo 6 pack. That is sufficient for day 0 through 21. Look at substrates, maybe make your own substrate, but be able to fill those 6 packs in trays. Get good water, good pH, good EC. Seed up, make it as uniform as possible. Overseed to get the number of uniform plants you want, because I tell you, crop uniformity is really important. If all your plants take off at the same time and fill in your row at the same time and flower at the same time and mature at the same time, that can be really beneficial for things like irrigation management, nutrient management, and things like that. So I don't know. I think you could just do a simple calculation, like maybe you're just trading for your starts right now, but if you're getting into thinking about paying for seedlings, you could take that number and be like, all right, what could I get for that? And like I said, I think you can get a reasonably big grow tent with a high quality LED light for like $600 total. Make some benches and get that really tight environment for all your seedlings to emerge. And you start doing the math. I mean, I don't know what you're paying for seedlings, but and how many seedlings you're using, but that could be, maybe a place to start.
Right. Yeah. That's a good one. Thank you. Yeah, I never thought about that.
I mean, the other thing, if you're just haven't done it yet and you're wondering about it, the truth is the easiest thing to produce are herbs and lettuce, crops because they have a short cycle time. And sometimes people can pay a fair amount for fresh herbs, and I don't know what kind of market, but to me, that would be kind of a good starting point to grow any fruiting crop or berry crop to maturity. You're gonna have to start investing in more kind of systems. So I would say a tent in a warehouse with a hydroponic system, doing some unique Thai basil, a variety of different things. If you just wanted to enhance your open field production, that could be one thing to kind of pencil out.
You know, we're big on the kale and the lettuce that and I've got collards growing year round now. So I've got that under control where I've got actually collard trees. And then we're big on fruit at ours. I got about 1.5 acres, like I mentioned before, and I got over 70 different species of fruit trees that are thriving. So I know I couldn't do that indoor, but I remember you telling me we could start those seedlings for the biodiversity projects, and then instead of buying all the trees, we grow them. We start growing them. That's what I do
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. So
I actually knew a company here in Davis that was breeding avocado in those grow tents and using LED lights and grow tents. And the idea was just taking very small trees instead of, 5 gallon or 15-gallon tree, getting really small grafted um, fruit trees and bulking them up in a tent. That could be another thing, right? If, 15-gallon tree is a lot more expensive,
yeah.
than a small tree. So you could buy, just get, almost in those you get your trees in smaller, smaller size, cheaper price, and then grow them and bulk them up yourself. It's another thought.
Yeah, I mean, right now, 5 gallon trees down here are going for 80, $90. But
Yeah.
one thing I've been seeing though too, and I think if I'm not mistaken, is the way that they're growing these trees and these fruit trees is like you can't really produce the same type fruit once you're trying to, spawn off of them. I don't think, or you losing flavor or something down the line. People are saying that's why we were looking at the heirloom seeds. Is that a true fact or is that just like a myth?
Are you talking about collecting seeds from fruit trees and growing those?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's not going to work out. And the reason is the way breeders have bred most, I would say, perennials and tree crops is based on clonal propagation. So basically, the varieties that you like to eat are clonally propagated, which means the parent is heterozygous and will be segregating. So any seeds off that tree are not going to be like the parent. They're going to be like the children of the parent. So they're going to be all different kinds. Some might be okay, but a lot will not be at all like the parent. So it's just genetic segregation of a clonal parent. So all tree crops, like all walnuts, are clonal varieties. All citrus, all those mandarins, satsuma, those are all clonally propagated. They're actually start in tissue culture, then they go through a grafting process where they're often grafted onto drought tolerant or dwarf rootstock to make those viable plant. But if you take seeds off the parent, it won't be true to type. You'll have this segregation step afterwards. So that is correct. It's not going to work out like that. You can't save seeds off fruit trees.
So how do you
No.
get good fruit? How do you get good fruit from how do you grow? I mean, if everything is cloned,
Yeah.
then where how do you get the original you know, the fruit?
You gotta
If
go to
you
Max,
I
Gregory.
mean, what happened to using the seeds? I mean, I'm hearing they're having seed. I was watching an article, watching a person talk about the seedless fruit and why they are having seedless fruit in order to be able to mass produce and not let other people grow fruit anymore. So I sat back and I listened. I was like, wow, is this really, really happening? Now I'm hearing you saying cloning fruit. You can't even get the seeds out the fruit to make the same type of fruit tree. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
where do you get the original seeds from? Do you where that's not cloned that you can, you know, grow and
Yep,
they taste
yep,
good?
yep. So check it out. Breeders do that. So breeders actually use seeds all the time.
Hmm.
And the thing is, there's a process called, I mean, this is part of the breeding process, which is, okay, let's say this. Okay, I want to create a new apple. Okay, so think of Cosmic Crisp. That's my favorite apple by far. That's been on the market for a while. I used to love Honey Crisp, but it's too fragile. I do like Fuji, but Cosmic Crisp has like
That's the
everything.
best.
Yeah, I
Fuji.
think it's crispy, it's tart, it's sweet, and it ships well. It's not, doesn't get damaged. And they're like available almost like 10 months of the year. They're good. So Cosmic Crisp is developed, I forget the two parents. I guarantee one is Honey Crisp and another one is another variety. So at some point, the breeders will grow those two trees up. They'll take pollen, they'll make a cross, and they'll produce seeds. They'll take those seeds and remember, it's like dogs, right? It's like mutts, right? You have a range of different mutts from those seeds, and you have to grow all those seeds up from the cross from those two parents. And the breeders will look at those individual seeds and the trees from those seeds, and they will see which one is the magic apple. So that's called a trial. And it relies on breeding techniques and segregating genetics to find like, wow, this one tree is the cosmic crisp. And the good news is, through tissue culture, you can take that single apple tree, that single selection, and you can propagate it. It's kind of like propagating Gregory forever. There's only one Gregory, and if you want to keep Gregory, then you have to have a way to basically clone it, and that's what breeders do. It doesn't mean they don't use seeds. It even doesn't mean you can keep the seeds. You can try and probably plant the seeds from a Cosmic Crisp apple. By all means, go ahead and do it. And I got tons of people, neighbors, who would say, "Oh, look at this avocado tree. I planted it from a pit, but it's not making fruit." And I'll be like, "Well, that's because of this whole genetic segregation thing from the parents. Not every pit is going to make a good avocado tree compared to the parent. You're welcome to do that. It's just likely going to be a waste of time and money. And that's why everybody decides, okay, I want the Cosmic Crisp, so I'm going to pay for it. And I want the clonal version, so every tree is the same. So
Mm,
there's no conspiracy here to, you know, suppress genetic diversity. It's really a fact that when people invest time and money in a farm, and they want absolutely uniform crops. They want efficiency, they want high performance, and they're happy to pay money from breeders to make the better crop varieties. And that's what plant breeding is. So that's kind of I guess that's my sermon. Yeah. Johnny
So I got
Appleseed
some.
is out of business.
So I have some collards that I've grown, and they went to seed. I'm like you, Josiah. My collards are staying in the Georgia collards, and they get huge. And I clip them, but they've grown. Some of them went into seed, and they dried. Now I'm attempting to plant those, and they are pushing up a little bit better than the original seeds. So I'm just waiting for them to come up so I can taste them to see, you know. But I have they produce thousands of seeds, thousands. I mean, I have trees of seeds, right? So can I sell those? My seeds?
It's crop by crop, and you're correct in that sense. So I also had some kale, had some winter
Mm-hmm.
kale that went to flower. They got completely pollinated. They had the silique. The silique had seeds.
Right.
You could thresh all that seed, get a bag of seed. You could clear out the small, the bad seed, and keep the good seed, put it in a bag. Honestly, with a lot of leafy crops like kale and probably collard, I bet you'll do okay. But in that
Mm-hmm.
case, it's a vegetative structure. You're eating a stem and a leaf. It's different than, for example, um, a Satsuma mandarin or a Hass avocado. That's a fruit, and that requires a
Mm-hmm.
lot more, I think, horsepower than like vegetative crops. So there are examples of where you can keep seeds, and I'll say that cherry tomatoes is another one. And for a variety of reasons, cherry tomatoes, if you take the seeds off those and replant them, you'll get something reasonably close to what the parent looks like. It has to do kind of with inbred and hybrid production. So, great questions. It's kind of was my life was working with breeders in these breeding pipelines. So I just look at it as number one, farmers, there's nothing worse than putting in a lot of time and money into a crop and then discovering you started with bad seed or you started with a bad variety or it wasn't what you thought. That is wasted time and money. And that's why farmers generally purchase seed or purchase clonal plants from a nursery. It's one of the biggest investments a farmer makes every single year. For a 2,000-acre corn or soybean farm, you're looking at $150,000 in seed costs upfront before you even plant or start your farm. So it is one of the biggest decisions. And I think if you've gotten burned a couple times by plants or seeds, you understand why there's a market for breeding and for seed production. Because yeah, uniformity, being true to type, being a variety that people actually want to consume, not just you for your personal use. Those are all things that farmers think about when they grow different things and purchase.
Hmm. Okay. Thank
It's it is great questions, and actually some smaller scale breeders like yeah, there's been many stories of backyard breeders who bred great varieties and actually made a ton of money selling or licensing their varieties. Um, So you don't have to be a big corporation. There's so many breeding and seed I mean, you just go online if you want to look at different collard greens. There's many varieties out there. There's so many choices. It's almost hard to pick. And actually, I tried two new zucchinis this year in my garden. One is this green kind of striped one. It looks kind of cool and nice. I'm like, fine. I seeded it up, and guess what? I'm never going to plant it again because it's so vegetative and it had such poor set that it just became this big vegetative waste of space. And actually, all three plants from that particular variety didn't do that well up here. So I'm
you.
not gonna I'm not gonna plant that one again. And that's kind of I think it's important to trial different genetics, to try different things. But make observations, keep a notebook, and when you see things that aren't working, take a note and don't try that again. It's so important to get the right variety for your particular location.
I do everything from seed. I don't buy seedlings and things like that. And what I find out is that and I buy non-genetically modified seeds. And I have my summer zucchini growing right now, and they are like flowering, and the females are beginning to fruit. The males were falling off. The flowers were falling off, and I have to hand pollinate, right? I hand pollinated a couple of them, but then the rest of them they just start pollinating themselves. So I mean, they're starting to come out really nice. And I bought the seeds from the Dollar Tree, and they are doing really well. Along with my collards, they're doing well. I'm in the process of growing some eggplant now and see how they're doing. So everything that I'm doing is like a trial and error because I don't really know too much about it. But I'm doing pretty good, and I'm having some good luck so far.
Um, well, it's great to hear, and I love the idea of starting with seeds. Um, I have to say, you'll walk into a standard nursery, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, whatever it is, and you look at the varieties they're selling, it's very limited compared to the number of seeds out there. So there are cases where they've done a really good job at deciding, okay, these are the varieties of tomato that do well here, and they focus just on those, and people have pretty good success. And then there are cases where you'll see a nursery selling a tree variety that has just no chance, right, to do well in your area because it doesn't get hot enough or it doesn't get cold enough or something like that. So
Right.
that's why starting from seeds is a great choice, especially if you want something that people don't have, something you particularly want. I mean, a typical one is in San Francisco Bay Area, where it's it's literally 30 degrees cooler there than it is in the Central Valley near Sacramento. You're not going to grow the same tomato in San Francisco versus Sacramento. It's literally 30 degrees cooler and has half the light during the summer. So they have these cold variety tomatoes that they sell in the Bay Area, and every now and then you'll see them trying to grow them. Sorry, sell the seedlings in Davis, Sacramento. Those varieties will not grow in this heat. I mean, it was 104 here yesterday. So yeah, those cool season tomatoes that are bred for Seattle, Portland, or San Francisco are not going to do well. So unfortunately, sometimes they'll just sell anything and people buy those and then the plants will die and they'll wonder why they didn't work. Could be genetics, could be your water, could be nutrition. That's why you kind of have to have that whole checklist.
Dan, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's leading me now to wonder like, how do we focus on shelf life, and maximum yield, and then also the taste? I know we're thinking about like the look and the aesthetics and things like that, but how do we get more into focusing on to producing something that gives us a high quality shelf life and also that same savory flavor and taste? Like I mentioned, I'm trying to go back to heirloom crops and things like that so I can get to the wild west version of fruits and vegetables again and away from this genetically made cloned piece of wax.
Yeah. um,
I
I
like that,
mean,
Josiah.
it, yeah, how do we, so I'm hearing again, fruit quality, crop quality. I had a question about crop nutrition, and actually it's come up on the previous course as well about nutrition of different crops grown under different systems. Um, we get into that, I think, the last lecture, second to last lecture, which is how do you produce high crop quality? To me, okay, let's talk about flavor. Um, everyone knows what a good melon tastes like, right? Um, the truth is, most of what people consider um, a good flavor in either a tomato or melon is sugar. That is actually sugar content.
Mm,
It's not all the micronutrients and the other aspects of it that people want. So there's a separation between flavor and nutrition. Most of the flavor in apples, berries, melons, even tomatoes comes down to sugar. And we actually talk about how to measure that. That's called bricks. And it's pretty easy to measure, actually. And you can buy a bricks meter and you can test the sugar of your strawberry by simply crushing it and measuring how much sugar is in there. So here's the problem with sugar. And here's why so much of the food you buy in the store does not taste because it has been bred intentionally for long shelf life.
mm,
And the truth is, we are throwing away as a society. They estimate 35% of all fresh food produced is thrown away. I guarantee you go behind any supermarket every single day, all that wilted lettuce, all those shriveled tomatoes that no one bought go straight to the trash. So we are throwing away about 35% of our fresh produce, and that's even with what farming, breeding, genetics, seed industry considers long shelf life. How do they get long shelf life produce? Several ways. One of the main ways is breeders intentionally breed for crops with less sugar
mm.
because sugar content is inversely related to shelf life. Remember,
Wow.
I don't know, we talked about Chandler strawberries, crazy strawberry nirvana, UC
Yeah.
Davis variety. It's so sweet. It literally melts in your mouth. It's like a gummy, it's just like pure strawberry gummy. Has so much sugar, it will not last 48 hours once it's ripe and off the plant. It'll just turn to
Damn.
liquid, and that's because it has so much sugar in there. So all the modern commercial Driscoll strawberry varieties are literally bred to have a very precise amount of sugar that will translate to a very specific amount of shelf life. And unfortunately, what that means are strawberries that are crunchy and not that sweet. It's just crazy. It's just part of our whole supply chain, the cost of food, and that whole fact that we're already throwing away 35% of all our food and our fresh food. And if we were to make stuff taste on a mass scale, have more sugar, then we're going to throw away even more food. But this is your opportunity. And this is why I think people are going to farmers markets and they're going to corner stores is because the big commercial farming operations and the big grocery retail outlets are tied into their system, which is long shelf life, reasonably good, let's say good enough for 7 out of 10 people model. Well, what about the same model? What about the Davis Farmers Market model, where you have small farmers producing crates and crates of tasty stuff with way more sugar, way more flavor? You bring it to the market, people are like, heck yes, I'm going to pay for that. That is awesome. I'm going to buy it. It's a normal part of my diet. I'm going to skip the Burger King. I'm going to buy and I'm going to buy a whole flat of strawberries or whatever it is. So that's where I think the opportunity comes in. Small farms, small plots have the opportunity to grow different varieties that have higher flavor. The nutrition thing is kind of a separate conversation, but that's anyways. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. And so I see where, I mean, in a business sense, right? If they know that strawberry's not going to have shelf life but 48 hours, I can see why. You know what I mean? They're trying to change it up, like to do the mass production. But like you said, if you get a small group, you can do seasonal farming, and I see that now too. So I see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's just trying to get that market of individual that wants to wait for that season. and then take it immediately, knowing that it's only going to last so long. So you would have to get them on your growth life, everything would have to, that's a hell of a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I view it as different market segments because the truth is, for most people, they're both working jobs. They they probably eat out like a couple times a week, and they do their shopping. They come home, they put their food away, and they try not to throw food away at the end, but they do because they can't eat all that lettuce. I mean, people buy these spring mixes, right, of just leafy greens, and then you eat like half of it and then you go back to it. Nope, it's all rotten and you got to throw it away. It's never a great feeling. So to me, I view it as different market segments. I'd like the premium or the tasty or the fresh segment to increase. I think it's a lot of the interest and passion I hear from these courses and the participants is around this exact aspect. And as an entrepreneurial idea, I mean, Josiah, you're kind of way ahead because you've already got an operation going. But I've heard so much interest in people saying, yeah, how can I be a grower? How can I start growing? And we talked about it in the last couple lectures where, yeah, I'm directing people away from what I consider the commercial large scale model. I think that's dominated, and I think they have perfected that. There's no way you're going to beat that, but you can beat it with this other model we just talked about.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just really staying in your lane once you know what you can grow. And then again, that marketing of that segment, right? And getting the people to understand the weight, and the anticipation of what it's going to really taste like. And I think we've done good at that, like at our urban garden, because it was a myth if I could do it or not, and it wasn't something where I came at it looking at profit. It was more so an ego thing of saying, okay, we can grow good fruit right here in the middle of San Bernardino, where it's high drug traffic, high crime rates, and people won't destroy it; they'll actually love it. And so, for the last 6 years, it's thriving. But now I'm looking at, okay, how would you really turn this into something that can sustain and make money, right? And get that customer base to say, yes, we're going to wait for the season because we are, greedy on certain things. Who doesn't want a fresh peach pie, in the middle of the winter, right? So
Yeah.
things like that. But I do understand that now. Thank you for breaking that down because it's the sugar content and things is really that I have to look at now on my end. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and the sugar content, remember, makes the shelf life go down. So they breed these varieties that are not that sweet, or varieties that can be picked when they're not fully mature and then ripen reasonably well on your counter. There's actually a lot of the peaches you notice you'll buy them and they're pretty hard, they're rock hard, and that's for harvest and transport. And then you put them in a bowl on your counter, and 3 days later they will get soft and they'll be pretty good. So that's another concept around breeding, which is basically delayed ripening or ripening once you get them home and they get reasonably sweet. It's never going to be like picking a peach right off a tree. Um, but here's the CEA concept for tree production, and so let's think about cherries, right? So it's sweet cherry season. I've seen everything from like $6 a pound to $3 a pound in Northern California. That's a premium crop. People pay a lot of money for it, but it's a very limited season, right? I mean, Washington State is starting to harvest now, and they'll bring those cherries down here. But there are controlled environment systems with cherry production, believe it or not, to where you can grow cherries in a protected system. It's basically a net house that protects it from heat, from rain, from sun scald. And it's a very simple shade structure, but people are actually growing fruit trees inside of low tech net houses. And what they're finding is that that extends the season significantly. So that's another concept that's actually really already in places like in the Mediterranean region where they're growing like dwarf cherry trees that don't get that tall, dwarf avocado trees, and a number of things in protected culture that allow you to have that
Mhm.
extended season, but also provide some insurance and protection to your tree crop as well. I've seen, yeah, I've seen berries, I've seen grapes all being grown in these shade houses in the right climate. Going back to DLI, what's the DLI requirement for avocado? What is it for cherry? What is it for grape? Those are all questions you need to know before you apply shade. And you also need to know how much light you get in your face. You could trial and error it, but that gets expensive. So that's where it's good to have some of these skills and to be able to model stuff out.
Yeah, hey, with that, then, so two things. Now, with the dwarfs, I was hearing you'd only get 5 to 6 good harvests out of them, and then you got to restart again. Is that true, or is that just myth?
Which crop are you thinking about?
We were talking about the dwarf citrus, the Myers lemons.
Um, yeah, no, it's going to be a little bit, I would say, crop specific. I've got a Satsuma, a mid dwarf Satsuma that's going on year 13. It's doing pretty well. I've got a
Okay.
Myers lemon that just go crazy. It's probably year 15. Um, but I will say, so I would say like apricot actually doesn't last that long. Like as a tree variety, you may only have 7 or 10 years of peak production, and then production will go down. And it's weird. You see people with these fruit trees, and they're all old, and they wonder, hey, why? This is a tree that's supposed to produce forever. It actually won't. I mean, a lot of plums, peaches, nectarines you're looking at yeah, 7 to 11 years of peak production, and then the productivity goes way down. And if you're a homeowner, fine, production goes down, you still get fruit, so you keep it another 5 years. At some point, you're gonna have to take it out. But if you're a
Yeah.
commercial farm, that peak quality and peak yield period is a window of time, and you have to kind of be aware of that. And yeah, trees don't last forever either. It's very much variety by variety specific.
And then there was a meter you said that we should get to test the sugar in our thing, in our fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, it's coming up in one of these lectures, but it's BRIX, brix meter. And brix is kind of an acronym, but it measures soluble sugars. I think it'd be cool, and they're not that expensive. You can buy them, go get one. And I would just love if people started playing with some of this stuff and testing it. It's literally you can crush it, and I think I even have a link in the additional learning. It has a video of someone testing strawberry bricks one by one and showing exactly how it's done, showing the differences between different strawberry varieties in terms of sugar. I think that's in there. You got yeah. It's a really cool video.
Oh yeah, I'll be getting one of these. It's real economical. I want to
Yeah,
know
how much
the
how much are they?
sugar in my phone. Like $20 on Amazon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's not going to apply to kale, but it would, I would say, for tomato, berries, fruits, and things like that. And I'm telling you, going all the way back to light, you will absolutely get different Brix numbers based on your environment. If you hit your light and temperature target on your berry crop, you will get to optimal sugar content, flavor, nutrition. If you are deficient in light, your crop is stressed from temperature, or you're not delivering enough nutrition, you will not hit your Brix number and you will not hit your quality number. I know I'm a militant on this stuff. I've grown so many times and I've seen so many facilities where people ask what's wrong, and a lot of the time it's light. either plants are too crowded in there, they're using too much shade, they're trying to grow in the winter with no supplemental lighting. All of those things contribute to poor productivity, poor cycle time, poor yield, and poor quality. Great questions today. So look, I think in terms of practical, Gregory already said he's growing from seed. A lot of people are growing from seed. If you're growing from seed and you want to look at different varieties instead of purchasing your nursery plants, then try investing in a tent with a light of some kind or a simple structure, like a poly frame that you can start seeding in the end of February. That's an example of what that can do for you. And the goal there would be to have some control over light and temperature in order to get a uniform crop. So when you do your transplant, all the plants are at the same stage. So when you water that row, all the plants have the same water use requirement. That's the benefit of a controlled environment nursery for open field production. Um, and again, going back to big farming, like processing tomatoes, all the tomatoes that are used in ketchup, salsas, and things like that are all processing tomatoes. Um,
Excuse me, Dan.
yeah, yeah,
Real quick. So why not? Here's what I've been doing researching. I'm in Zone 8. I'm in a high desert in Apple Valley. I'm in Zone 8, where it's hot. However, I'm researching the times the crop that do well in Apple Valley. At what times, when it's the planting time, when it's the seed, to how to plant your seeds. So I've been doing that research, the type of soil, what soil mixtures that you need up here in the high desert. um why not just plant at those times and keep that crop in season, if that makes sense what I just said. Why not just plant, for instance, like my Georgia collards, right? We know in the summertime they won't be as sweet as in the wintertime because the frost on those is what makes those greens brings out the sweetness. They need a frost on it to bring out the sweetness on it, right? But they will grow year round in this desert up here. So why not just focus on the crops that will grow seasonal in each season?
yeah. Well, you're talking open field production.
Right.
Um, and the truth is, yeah, open field production is limited by the season. And that is generally the way it works, even though, again, you go into Costco, you can get berries off season. A lot of times, like I said, 80% of our peppers, cucumbers, zucchini, tomato are imported from Mexico in the wintertime. And the reason is, right, you've got warm weather down south, just like Spain grows in the winter and tips north to Northern Europe. Same exact situation here. Mexico's got a warm climate, so they grow and they ship it up here. So yeah, people want sweet peppers year round, so you can get by them, and it's just a handful of crops. For me personally, I'm buying and purchasing pretty seasonal stuff, to be totally honest. I mean, I don't bother buying watermelon before July 1st because I know that those are grown in a less ideal environment. And honestly, they're just not going to be sweet enough for me to try. I'm definitely not going to buy a melon. I'm definitely not going to buy a watermelon in January because guess when that was planted? That was planted in September. Even if it's in Mexico, it's planted in September and it was pollinated in November and the melon was harvested in January. I'm sorry, a melon that's ripening in December and January is not going to be anywhere as sweet as one that ripens and you'll in July. So I basically, yeah, I'm the same way. I'm like, all right, I love watermelon, so I'm going to eat it from July 1st to October 31st, and that's my season. And I've always got half a melon in my fridge, and I'm always eating one at night with friends. So
Right.
I have, what is that? That's what is that? July, August, September, October. Yeah, 5 months, right? That I get to eat awesome watermelon. That's fine. I'll take a break for 7 months and I'll eat something else. I'm fine with that. But the whole point of controlled environment is that people do want to buy stuff year round, like berries or leafies and things like that. So
And so
that's where yeah.
that's what pushes the genetically modified fruits and vegetables,
Well,
right?
yeah, that genetic modification is biotechnology. That's kind of a different concept than all the traditional foods we're talking about. Those are all bred through modern breeding techniques and are not genetically modified. The genes are moved around through traditional breeding, but none of the fruits. I think there's one genetically modified apple. The papaya is genetically modified because it was going to go extinct from a virus. But other
O-
than that, there are no genetically modified whole
Okay, then
fruit and vegetables.
let me say cloned. Let me change that to cloned. So that's why they're
Okay.
cloning. Is that why they're cloning so that they can have the same fruits year round?
Well, like I said, cloning is the way to take a very unique individual
Mm-hmm.
that meets every single consumer aspect and farming aspect you want, the cosmic crisp. That is
Mm.
an incredibly unique individual, apple. And by cloning, you can make a million trees from the original parent. That's how it works. And here's another classic example of clonal navel oranges. Navel oranges was a natural mutation at oh, what are the, it was a natural mutation of an orange at a monastery, I believe, in Brazil. And I believe a monk took a cutting, a clone from that tree, and everyone knew about this orange tree. It had no seeds, incredibly juicy, and it had that additional little navel area. Easy to peel, super sweet, very juicy, no seeds. Amazing natural mutation. People knew about it. They said this is the best orange ever, so they cloned it out. They made millions and millions of trees off that one natural mutation, and now I eat like 10 pounds of navel oranges in the wintertime.
They're
That's how cool it
delicious.
is.
Yeah.
Dan, if I may, one other one that I've been trying to toggle is how do I calculate the number of plants expected to yield by my customer demand and then break even prices before choosing my crop that I'm gonna grow with?
Ooh, yeah, that's pretty tricky, man. Maybe we should connect one-on-one after that. Are you talking about plant density or how many plants to produce that produce so much food?
Right. So plant density and how to produce, because I'm trying to scale it up now. I've proven I could do the local community model. Now I want to say, okay, I can take a small school district and supply them. You know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as he is, trying to figure that out as well.
Yep. Well, I think it's a really important exercise, and I think a lot of growers do it. So I think you just need to sit down on an Excel spreadsheet and you need to basically set up your own calculation system. And you're going to go crop by crop and you're going to decide, okay, indeterminate tomato is going to be one plant every 3 feet. That's what I do, right? In the row. And then you can assume, all right, I'll get 40 pounds of ripe tomatoes from one indeterminate tomato plant every 3 feet over the next 10 weeks. You got to do some of that math. For lettuce, yeah, it's going to be, every 3 feet, you're going to have 8 plants per foot kind of thing in the row. So you got to kind of run through all those key aspects, and you're probably going to have to estimate how much how much food you'll get off each one, and then how many rows, and then just, I would say, sit down and do it on, a spreadsheet. And you're going to have to estimate some things. And that's the other thing about genetics, right? Once you get a genetic that you like, I'm guessing most of you will go back to that same variety. That's how I am. When I need another mandarin tree, I'm going to get the Satsuma because there's just nothing that beats it. And so, um, in terms of predicting output on your farm, finding great varieties you like that are easy to grow in your location, that is worth money. So, yeah, going back to that hot inland climate, choose things that do well in that climate and grow them seasonally and things like that. So those are all kind of things as you grow more and as you scale up and get more experience, take very careful notes because when you find a variety that does well, you're going to want to keep that variety going forever. It's something that most farmers cherish when they find a variety that does particularly well in their location and in their soil.
Thanks. Yeah, and I'll be glad to send you out after this. I'll send you an Excel sheet that we've set up currently, so you could see what I'm doing, and I'm happy to meet after.
Yeah, I'm happy to connect. But look, it's 6:30, 6:31. So good discussion. Like I said, look forward to the next 4 lectures. Might get into some of these same topics. So it was a really good discussion. Let's keep it going. Let's keep talking. Please post links and things on Basecamp. Please look at that additional reading. You can go ahead in lectures, you can go back in lectures, but look at that additional reading and kind of go through those clicks and links and be able to understand there's so much information out there. I've chosen those links because it's legitimate info. And there's a lot of BS info if you just start searching on YouTube. Honestly, a lot of bad information. So that additional reading is meant to be things that are curated to be legitimate, good advice. That was my goal right there. So ton of stuff, but thanks everyone. I'm going to sign off.